Before we get to the reason that we're all gathered, I want to say a few words to the residents of the city. I know that there's been a lot of concern about whether or not federal troops, federal agents were going to be deployed to the city of Chicago. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of saber rattling about that coming from the president and members of his team. What I understand at this point, and I caveat that, is that the Trump administration is not going to foolishly deploy unnamed agents to the streets of Chicago. As I understand it, what we will be getting are some additional resources in the FBI, the DEA, and the ATF. And unlike what happened in Portland, what we will receive is resources that are going to plug in to the existing federal agencies that we work with on a regular basis to help manage and suppress violent crime in our city. And a big difference is, unlike what happened in Portland, the U.S. Attorney himself, John Lausch, is in the loop and is going to be help managing the additional resources. That is a big difference. In Portland, they ignored the U.S. Attorney, put these agents on the street, and I don't think anybody can quibble with the fact that what happened was not only unconstitutional, it was undemocratic. I've been very clear that we welcome actual partnership, but we do not welcome dictatorship. We do not welcome authoritarianism, and we do not welcome unconstitutional arrest and detainment of our residents. That is something I will not tolerate. And we've been very clear with that. I sent a letter to the president yesterday outlining various ways in which, if he really wanted to partner with us, that he could do so. There are some things that the federal government is uniquely qualified to handle, and we would welcome that. But what we do not welcome and what we will not tolerate and we will fight against is the deployment of unnamed federal special secret agents onto our streets to detain people without cause and effectively take away their civil rights and their civil liberties without any due process. That is not going to happen in Chicago. And if we see that, the minute we see it, we will be rushing into court to stop that from happening. So I want people to understand we are on top of this. We're doing our diligence. We're not taking anything for granted, but we feel like we have information that allows us to say, at least at this point, that we don't see a Portland-style deployment coming to Chicago. Now, if that changes, as I said, we will not hesitate to use every tool at our disposal. I appreciate the number of people who have raised concerns. I appreciate the people in labor, the people in social services organizations, and in our civil rights community that have stepped up and are at the ready. And if you do see something, and I hope that's not true, but if you do see something, please contact the mayor's office, contact 911, or contact your local alderman to let them know that something is up, something is amiss. We need everybody in our city to be the eyes and ears on this thing, because we are not going to allow democracy to be hijacked by the federal government. That is not happening in Chicago. Now, with that, I will call Troy Williams to the podium so we can start our real reason for being here, which is to emphasize the importance of wearing masks everywhere. Thank you. And with that, Troy, come on up.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to join Mayor Lightfoot today, as well as mascots from the sports teams in Chicago, especially Chicago's own Southpaw, who's here to rep the best baseball team in the city, the Chicago White Sox. My name is Troy Williams. I'm a coach with White Sox Amateur City Elite, otherwise known as ACE. For years, ACE has given Chicago's youth an opportunity to succeed both on the diamond and in life outside the ballpark. I know, because I was one of those kids 12 years ago when the White Sox and ACE came to me and gave me a chance to be on this baseball team. Now, as a coach, it's my job to ensure our youngest residents have the opportunity to be a part of this team. And while I've always believed that ACE and the White Sox are the best baseball teams in the city, We are here today because when faced with an unprecedented crisis like COVID-19, we are all, in fact, one home team. From the White Sox to the Cubs, the Bears to the Blackhawks and Bulls, all of us have a role to play in keeping each other safe from COVID-19. That's why we're launching the We Are All One Home Team campaign to encourage Chicago's residents, especially those young like me, to encourage each other to wear masks, social distance, and follow the public health guidelines. We need everyone to do their part and protect one another by taking the necessary precautions. It's the only way we can beat COVID-19 and win. If Southpaw or Benny the Bull can wear a mask, anyone can. We love our sports in Chicago, and all of us would rather be here in Sox Park, Wrigley Field, Soldier Field, or the United Center, cheering on our favorite players and hanging with our friends. The quickest way we can do that is by wearing a mask and following our public health guidelines. So please, remember, we are all one home team. So be a team player and do your part. And while I'm the coach for ACE, there's only one coach for the city of Chicago. And with that, I'd like to welcome to the podium our mayor and the coach of our home team. Please welcome Mayor Lightfoot.
Thank you. So you can tell from the smile on my face that I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to be here wearing my home team jersey and hat, the Chicago White Sox. And I told Kenny Williams, who I just saw in the parking lot, they're off to a great start, which of course makes all of us White Sox fans extraordinarily happy. I want to thank Coach Troy for that introduction. And if you don't know his story, you should. This is a lifelong Chicagoan, graduate of Simeon High School, proud member of Alcorn State, led that baseball team, was as a pitcher, and then stayed on as a graduate assistant, and now is back here in Chicago, really helping shake the lives of a lot of young men in our city. So Coach Troy, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to contribute to really the vitality and health of our young people in the city. We also have to give a shout out to the remarkable ongoing work of the entire team at ACE, which works hard to give our city's youth educational opportunities and to further their careers. I also want to acknowledge two incredible city council members who are here. First, the hometown alderman, Patrick Daley Thompson. He is incredibly diligent and working hard for his ward. This is a man who understands the needs of the residents in his ward, and thank you, Alderman Thompson, for being here. And I also want to acknowledge my friend, Alderman Michelle Smith, and I will tell you, there's not been a more diligent person on this whole issue of masks than Alderman Smith, and I appreciate you being here and your diligence on this important issue. And we got to give a shout out to the mascots, Benny the Bull, Southpaw, and Sky Guy, for taking the time to be here as well as our great sports teams that have come together and made our We're Not Playing initiative possible, helping encourage Chicagoans to be safe during the global pandemic. I also want to acknowledge our health commissioner, Dr. Allison Arwady, for her ongoing work to keep us updated and educated. I'm going to zoom through these comments in light of the fact that it's now starting to rain. But the bottom line here is we need to make sure that we continue to be diligent and follow all of the public health guidance that's so important. And one of the most important things is wearing a face covering when you leave your house. We know that this works. In a world where COVID is still here, where we don't have the luxury of taking chances, we got to social distance. We got to make sure that wearing face coverings. In order to further that work, the Department of Public Health has partnered with a number of other institutions to make sure that we are reaching our young people. We're concerned about the uptick in cases in the 18 to 29 and the 30 to 39-year-old category, and we want to make sure that we do our part. But that's why this new campaign, We Are All One Team, is so important. We need to make sure that we are all in this together, because COVID-19 is ruthless. It doesn't spare anyone. And young people, you're not immune. You're not invincible, not when it comes to this disease. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to be smart, to be safe, and make sure that we're emphasizing, people, you must wear a face covering when you leave your house. And with that, I'll call up Dr. Arwady to give us a few words. Doctor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for being here and being part of this campaign. I'll also be brief, but I just want to make the point that none of the athletes here in Chicago go out without putting on their equipment. The football players put on their helmets, the baseball players put on their batting helmets, and the list goes on. They wouldn't think of going out on the field without it. And I want folks in Chicago to think of your mask in the same way. It's even more important in some ways than that equipment that the athletes wear, because you're not only helping to protect yourself, you're protecting others when you make that decision. I answer a lot of questions about masks every day. I want you to know that they work. We have lab studies that show that they work. Part of my job is to read journals like the Physics of Fluids, and there was an article this week that showed with a mannequin that was doing a very, really a big cough, and they have this mannequin cough over and over again with different kinds of face coverings. Big cough, no face covering. The mannequin's cough droplets went about 8 feet. With the regular kind 2-ply fabric face covering, those droplets go about 2.5 inches. It makes a big difference when you wear your mask in spreading COVID. We've also seen this work really across different countries, across different states. We've seen that when masks are in place, the rates of COVID go down. There was an article out of Health Affairs suggesting there's already been about probably 400,000 cases of COVID that have been averted here in this country, where there have been requirements for face coverings put in place. And I want to remind you that it is the law here in Illinois and in the city of Chicago for people over the age of 2 in public places to wear your face covering, unless there's an exemption in the Phase 4 guidance. So please abide by the law. And finally, we know from case studies, there have been examples where we had a lot of concern for spread. You might have heard early on, after Missouri opened, there was a case of 2 women who were working in a hair salon who were wearing their mask. Their customers were wearing their mask. They found out they had COVID. They had been in close contact with 140 people. How many people got COVID? 0. Largely because those masks help to limit the spread. They don't entirely eliminate it, and we need people to be keeping your distance. We need people to be washing your hands, doing all of the other things. But this is one of the easiest things that you can do and that all of us can do as Chicagoans as part of one team. I also briefly want to mention the travel order. Every Tuesday we do update our travel order, and we will be adding Kansas to the list of the states where the outbreak is not in good control. The outbreak is not in good control in large part because people are not wearing masks in the way that they need to. And I want to note that Wisconsin is getting very close to being on this list. They could be added as soon as next week. When I talk to folks in Wisconsin, whether that's the state epidemiologist, whether that's people just on an anecdotal level, we know people are not wearing masks there at the level that they are here in Chicago. So we'll keep you updated on that. But in the meantime, we need everyone to keep doing your part, be part of one team all here in Chicago, no matter which sports teams you support. Please wear the mask. It's the law. It works. Keep your nose and your mouth covered. And thank you. With that, I believe we are...
We're going to have the Alderman speak.
Okay, next we will have... No? Alderman?
We're all good.
We're all good. Everybody's noticing it's raining and we're all on one team.
I have to say one thing.
Perfect. Thank you, Alderman Smith.
So, greetings from the north side, and I know that we are here in beautiful Sox Park, and I'm thrilled to be here, but I know I snuck in wearing a little bit of some other team's colors to make sure that we all know that we are all one team, whether we're Cubs, Sox, or any other team that we support. And for my north side friends, if everyone would wear a mask for 6 weeks, we would have this thing licked. We would be in phase 5 if everyone wore a mask. And I'm asking and hoping that everyone joins the team that's going to defeat COVID. Thank you.
All right, I think we're in a little more comfortable place.
Make sure you're not completely in the dark, because with the light behind you, you will wash down. So if you keep your second
Yeah, sure, sure.
let the light-
Take your time.
Okay, thank you. noticed the Cub mascot was here.
Got to talk to them about that. They were invited. They were invited. Pardon me? Without? Yeah. Okay. All right, that's fine. All right, let us know when you're ready, guys.
So, biggest question of the day has been, the biggest question of the day has been about the federal agents. You addressed them as we started. Can you tell us who you had the conversations with? Were they with John Lausch, or were they with some other agency, with the Department of Homeland Security? Can you describe those conversations for us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I personally have had discussions with a number of people, including John Lausch, the U.S. Attorney. John and I have known each other for 20 plus years. We were colleagues together in the U.S. Attorney's office back in the day. I have a tremendous amount of confidence in him because I know who he is. I know that he loves the city, and he understands the importance of making sure that we are using resources to work together in a collaborative way. So I have a great confidence in him. We've talked to, me and my team, and the superintendent have talked to a number of other folks. Now, look, the information is only as good as what the other people who we've talked to know. I don't put anything past this administration, which is why we will continue to be diligent and why we will continue to be ready. If we need to stop them and use the courts to do so, we are ready to do that. We've been in conversation with the governor, with the attorney general, Kwame Raoul. We're all on the same page. While we all understand that having additional federal resources can be a value add, they're not a value add if they're nameless agents riding around in vans, pulling people off the street, depriving them of their constitutional rights. That is not what a democracy looks like. And we're not going to have that in the city of Chicago. So I do want residents to remain diligent. We need to expand our eyes and ears on this thing because unfortunately we can't put anything past the Trump administration. I'm hopeful that they will not be foolish enough to bring that kind of nonsense to Chicago, but I'm also not naive, and we're going to be diligent and we're going to be ready, and if we need to stop them, we are going to.
So of the agents that are going to be sent, how do you want to see them used?
Well, the only way that it would actually be a value add is, one, under the guidance of the U.S. Attorney here in the Northern District of Illinois, plugging into existing infrastructure. All those agencies are here. They've been here for decades. They have ongoing cases that they're investigating, ongoing efforts that they're engaged in to help us in the violence fight. That would be useful. There's lots more. I sent a letter to the president yesterday. There are some things that the federal government is uniquely qualified to do, starting with passing common sense gun legislation. One of the primary drivers of the violence in Chicago is we have way too many illegal crime guns on our streets every day. Every year, and it's been this way now for years, the Chicago Police Department takes more illegal guns. That's guns that were sold and within 3 years end up on the streets involved in a crime. Our Chicago Police Department takes more illegal guns off the street year over year than New York City and LA combined. And the reason is we're surrounded by states that have much more lax gun legislation. You can drive over the border to Indiana, unfortunately, and get almost military-grade weapons in any quantity that you want. We've got to also stop social media platforms for being a marketplace for the sale of illegal guns. We need the federal government's help to crack down on the gun trafficking that is routine, unfortunately, in our city and ends up in the death of our children. That's something that if the president wanted to do something effectively right here, right now, he could do that. If he put his weight behind federal common sense background checks, stopping the proliferation of assault weapons, not allowing people who are too dangerous to fly to get access to guns. Very simple, low-hanging fruit. If he wanted to do that, that would make a measurable difference in the violence fight here in Chicago and the cities across the country. That's what partnership would look like. He's chosen not to do that and instead vilify Chicago, make us a punching bag. We're not having it.
Are you going to release the contents of the letter?
I'm sorry?
Will you release the letter that you sent to the mayor?
Oh, we made
And
it.
the president?
We made it public yesterday, so we can get that to you.
All right. Bill Cameron is asking, what would be the legal basis for preventing Trump's agents from hitting the streets in Chicago? Or
Well,
getting them
I'm not going to. I'm not
to.
going to reveal all of our legal strategy, but suffice it to say, we believe that we have good grounds to do so.
All right. Let's switch to another issue. The rollback on some of the
Yeah.
restrictions, the COVID-19 restrictions. There's been widely reported that Guthrie's in Wrigleyville is having to close. Your response to business having to close and other businesses that might have to close as well?
Look, we don't want to see any business close, obviously. And we certainly know that our bars, our restaurants, our hospitality industry, personal services have been particularly hurt by the necessary measures that we've had to take in response to COVID-19. But what we also know, and I'm not pointing out Guthrie's, I've been in Guthrie's many times to and from Wrigley Field, but what we know is that the bars are a source of potential spread. What we've seen is young people in 18 to 29 to 30 to 39 age range gather in those places and policing that and getting compliance in bars where people are congregating. That's what bars are about. That's the social atmosphere that is created. That in this climate, that creates a risk. And Dr. Artie, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit more on why we decided we have to roll back inside consumption of alcohol at bars.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm sure people have seen across the country, there's been a lot of work to really lay out risks. There is almost no activity that includes any interaction with a living, breathing human that is completely without risk, but there is certainly a range, and bars really, unfortunately, are at the top there where we think about risky activities. Partly it's that they're likely to attract younger people, and as the mayor said, they are places to congregate. But also, if you think about what's actually happening in a bar, people are drinking. By definition, they're not wearing their mask, and it is a loud environment. And so think about if you've been in a bar, you need to raise your voice, you need to project, sometimes you even need to yell to make yourself heard. That is also a scenario where your own germs are even more likely to go out. And so where we look at the mix and then you add alcohol in, and we know that even people with the best of intentions of social distancing, some of that can sometimes fall a little bit by the wayside. It just becomes harder for people to always remember to keep that in mind. And so when we put all of that together, this isn't about punishing bars, it's just about doing the things that we need to do to limit risk. We, for the moment, certainly have outdoor consumption still available at bars. We know that outdoor is not without risk, but it is better than indoor. And we really want to take this sort of more surgical approach to keeping our outbreak in control. Doing some of these things, although it's hard on a business like Guthrie's, I know how hard it is when we do this. The goal here is to keep us in control and to keep us from having to take the really big steps backwards. We need to go back to phase 3 that would have huge implications for the whole city. We'll be following the data. If we get back on a downward trajectory, things start to look better. We also have metrics for thinking further ahead about being able to reopen. But right now, with what's going on here in Chicago and around the country, we're at a pause, caution, careful, putting things in place to make sure we hold on to the success that we've had and ideally not see the problems that we've seen arise in other settings. Thanks.
Is there anything that can be done to help some of these businesses that may end up going or getting close to going out of business? The city can do for them?
Well, we put a number of tools in place, really from the very beginning of the stay-at-home order to help businesses. So, for example, we stood up a $100 million small business loan fund. That's still available, a resiliency fund. We have partnered with the United Way and Chicago Community Trust to stand up a Together Now fund, again, intended to help small businesses in particular, and we'll be announcing soon the first levels of those applications. So there are tools that are available for small businesses that have been hurt, and we're going to continue to work with them and think creatively about other things that we can do to make sure that we are keeping our small business community vibrant and strong.
Charlie Myerson is asking, does the voter photographic evidence of what happened Friday night in Grant Park, we lend credence to, among others, former Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy's assertion that outside agitators are showing up to trigger mayhem at otherwise peaceful protests.
Well, look, I don't want to speculate. Obviously, this is an active investigation that's going on. The people that were that paused, that dressed themselves in the black gear, that put up the black umbrellas, and then were passing out projectiles to use against our police department, that is very disturbing. And we can't not have that. We are not going to give over our streets to vigilantes. I've been very, very clear about that. That is an active investigation. I don't want to comment further, but we are concerned about that. We saw some of that in late May and early June. It's certainly something that's existed in other cities across the country, but we are not going to tolerate that kind of vigilantism here in our city. And what happened? When that happened and chaos broke out and the police were being attacked, innocent people who came to peacefully protest ended up getting hurt. Now, there's no justification for any excessive force that was used, and obviously we're all now familiar with the case of the young girl who had her teeth knocked out. Unacceptable. That is an active investigation. But when people come to hijack peaceful protests and foment that kind of not just chaos, but criminal activity that puts everybody at risk. We have a long history in the city of peaceful protests. That's what we need to get back to. And we are going to do everything that we can to protect people's rights to express themselves. First Amendment is sacred. We all believe that. Our police department understands and believes that as well. But we've got to do that facing the reality that unfortunately there's some people who are going to embed themselves and try to wreak havoc.
A couple questions. Are any youth summer sports activities such as basketball or baseball tournaments being allowed in the Chicago Park District right now? And if so, what are the health and safety guidelines?
There's limited activity that's being allowed in the park districts, and again, I'll invite Dr. Already to speak to that. We know that full-on contact sports carry risk, and so we've limited those. But they're a drill. For example, my daughter's in a park district basketball camp. They're mostly doing drills, getting outside, engaging in healthy activities. That's critically important for everybody, but it's also critically important for our young people to be able to have that kind of activity. Whether or not more contact sports will be allowed is really going to be dictated by the public health guidance. We are in a regular conversation with the state, particularly IHSA, the Illinois High School Sports Association. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to making sure that our young people in particular are protected. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Dr. Already.
I'll be brief. Just to say that the Chicago Department of Public Health worked really closely with the Chicago Park District as we were thinking about what this summer would look like. I think broadly it's been quite successful in terms of our ability to think about what it looks like to have smaller groups and pods and be keeping people apart, even looking ahead to hopefully being able to be in a place to have a hybrid school option. I think we've learned quite a bit from what that can look like through some of the summer programming. There certainly have been limitations around some of these sorts of activities, and it's all about balancing risk here. As I said, there's no such thing as a risk-free interaction with another person, but contact sports are a higher risk than some other kinds of activities. And so broadly, the Park District has more been working on skills and ways that don't have as much of that personal interaction, and has been having the face coverings be part of that.
And the last question, maybe I'm going to ask this one, is Charlie Myerson is asking again, given the importance of hand washing and other hygiene in fighting COVID-19, what can the city do in the long run to make hand washing and restroom facilities more accessible to the public, especially the homeless?
Well, we've been very focused on that again since March, and specifically for the homeless population. I mean, we have gone all in. We started with decompressing the shelters. We opened up other opportunities for them to have residential living. We continue to do that. We know that that's a critical part of keeping people safe. We put in restroom facilities. We put in hand washing stations in areas where there have been encampments. So we've been very, very focused on the homeless population really from the very beginning, and we'll continue to make sure that that population gets the resources that it needs to be safe.
And the last couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, we got a copy of the revised Woodlawn Housing Protection Ordinance this morning. Can you say why your administration changed certain aspects of it and any kind of timeline for when it'll be introduced and passed in City Council?
Well, we've been very engaged with the local aldermen, and particularly Alderman Jeanette Taylor. We've had very productive conversations with her and members of her team, and I believe that she's now signed on to be a co-sponsor to that. We'll be introducing that as part of the City Council process tomorrow, and look towards passage likely in September.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Any other
Mayor.
question? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.